The last new Beatles song is finally here, and there is much to discuss, so let's get into it. My thoughts on Now and Then by the Beatles right now on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle, and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a moment to hit subscribe so you won't miss future reviews and more. I remember the first time I reviewed a quote-unquote new release from the Beatles. You won't find it on YouTube. It was all the way back in 2006 when I was a music writer for a magazine. Remember magazines? This was when the album Love came out, and I remember thinking how lucky I was as both a writer and a fan that I got to cover new music from one of the greatest bands of all time, something I'd never expected I'd be able to do. Fast forward to 2023. If 17 years ago you'd told me I'd be reviewing new releases from both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, not to mention Pink Floyd's Roger Waters, all within the span of about a month, I'd have thought you were crazy. But we live in remarkable times, do we not? I have to admit, I approached this so-called new music from the Beatles with more skepticism than excitement. First and foremost, there's the song. Now and Then was originally a demo John Lennon recorded on cassette in the late 70s. During the early 90s recording sessions, when Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison put together both Free as a Bird and Real Love for the Beatles anthology, Now and Then was also considered for inclusion. After earnestly working on the track and recording new parts for it, the song was ultimately abandoned. The official story is that the demo recording was too low quality and they could not separate John's vocal from the piano. It's also been said that George Harrison was, shall we say, less enthusiastic about the song for reasons not limited to the poor audio quality of the demo. So in its demo form, the song has been floating around for literally decades. You can easily find it right here on YouTube if you like. When I heard it for the first time, I thought it was fine. I always enjoy hearing demos and outtakes by my favorite acts, but it's rare that I hear anything previously unreleased that I get excited about. To me, the Now and Then demos sounded like a song that still needed some work, from an instrumental and recording perspective, obviously, but also perhaps in terms of composition. From a lyrics and melody perspective, the song struck me as being just as unfinished as the recording itself. That may be part of what George's objection was related to. And without John, there was no way to workshop those elements as a band. So as a song, Now and Then never rated particularly high for me. But now that we have the new fully produced Beatles version of the song, I'd say I've warmed up to it quite a bit. There's no doubt the way they've been able to restore John Lennon's vocals here through AI and machine learning technology is absolutely remarkable. We can only imagine how Free as a Bird and Real Love might have sounded if this technology had been available 30 years ago. And when I consider all three of these songs together, which seems highly appropriate, I feel like Now and Then is the most successful at sounding like a true Beatles song. I've always felt like Jeff Lynne's production on the anthology singles was far too heavy-handed, and the way they traded off vocals, particularly on Free as a Bird, felt very uncharacteristic for the band. Some of those decisions were certainly necessitated by the limitations of the technology of the time. But with Now and Then, the project had the advantage of being able to use a completely restored, high-quality John Lennon vocal. The benefits of that are enormous. Rather than having to have Paul share the lead, the entire song keeps John in the spotlight. Yes, we do get Paul and Ringo on backing vocals, but that's where they should be. I feel like they're a bit too present at times, but not so much that it takes me out of the song or detracts from the miracle of John's restored vocals. From an instrumentation perspective, though, I have mixed feelings. I think the string arrangement is terrific and a great choice. I wish they'd gone a little further with that, in fact. As I was listening, I was imagining how it could have sounded fully orchestrated, like Eleanor Rigby. Meanwhile, we get solid performances from Ringo on the drums and Paul on bass. What is a little unclear, though, is George's contribution. We know he recorded guitar parts during the anthology sessions, but we also know that Paul played guitar in the more recent sessions. I'm not sure who we're hearing at any given time, but I obviously hope, more often than not, that it is actually George. Importantly, though, one section where it is not George is the guitar solo. Paul handles those duties and has said he's tried to provide a performance that channels Harrison's sound. I appreciate the effort, I suppose, but it still sounds a bit anemic. If anything, it makes me miss George on this track even more. Then there's the piano, which was at the root of the problems the group encountered when they originally tried to resurrect the track in the anthology sessions. That inability to separate John's vocal from John's piano. For this new version, we get, unsurprisingly, McCartney on piano, and he essentially delivers a good, clean performance that recreates what we hear from John on the demo. In fact, Paul has said that's what he's doing here. He's tried to recreate John's performance. There's something about that that doesn't sit right with me. Don't get me wrong, Paul is a great pianist and arguably much better than John. But knowing that in the absence of both Lennon and Harrison, McCartney has decided to mimic their styles for this recording leaves a somewhat sour taste in my mouth. Which brings me to another point that doesn't seem to get discussed much. There's this idea that if we have all four members singing, that's what makes it a Beatles song. But to me, one of the biggest gaps in all three songs, the two anthology tracks and Now and Then, is Lennon's guitar. Never forget, he wasn't just a singer in the band. His guitar sound and performing style strongly contributed to the character of the Beatles. I especially felt that absence on Free as a Bird and Real Love. It's certainly less glaring of an issue on the mostly piano-driven Now and Then, but still, the fact that John isn't playing on this quote-unquote last Beatles song makes me a bit sad. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of Beatles stans out there who were determined to worship this song before they even heard a single note. But let's keep it real here. The most remarkable thing about Now and Then is the accomplishment of what was able to be created with modern technology. The song is fine. As songs go, I think Free as a Bird and Real Love were better compositions, but I like Now and Then much more in terms of both production and that Beatles feeling. It feels like a late period Beatles song, while the two anthology tracks strain too much toward nostalgia. I rarely return to Free as a Bird or Real Love. I mean, be honest, do you listen to those very often? They're fine. That's it. It was exciting when they first came out. I was managing a record store at the time, and it was fun to see so many Beatles fans show up for the midnight release sales of the anthologies, blasting those songs over the sound system and marveling at the fact that we were hearing something we'd never thought could be possible. But after the newness wears off, after the novelty of the technology fades, where do these songs fit within the incredible body of work that is the Beatles? A body of work that's being simultaneously celebrated with the expanded releases of both the Red and Blue Greatest Hits albums. There's been lots of debate about which songs should or should not have been included on these new editions. Now and Then lands on the Blue album, but the absence of both Free as a Bird and Real Love has left many fans disappointed. But the honest truth is, if I was to be put in charge of packing 4 CDs or 6 vinyl LPs with the best music of the Beatles, none of those 3 songs would be included. Make no mistake, though, these songs matter. They're part of the Beatles' history, part of their legacy. They're more than a footnote in the story of the Fab Four. And while I may not be fully in love with Now and Then, I am so excited about how it has brought one of my favorite bands back into the larger spotlight. For diehard fans like me and probably most of you, the Beatles never left the spotlight. But for the millions and millions of casual fans around the world, it's probably been a while since the Beatles made a significant impact on popular culture. Yes, the Get Back movie probably elevated awareness, as well as Love and the Beatles' #1 collection before that. But not since the anthology has the whole world had the Beatles on their mind, all at the same time. There's a new Beatles song. The last Beatles song. That's a thrilling thing to be able to say, and it's worthy of celebration. So long live the Beatles. Long live Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. And long live the memory of George Harrison and John Lennon. Now, then, and forever. Once again, my name is Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.